Well, yes, SpoFi Nation, welcome to the Spread Zone. We've been waiting for this one, man. This is going to be our NFL show covering all things NFL. We're going to be talking bets, props, awards, DFS, all that good stuff. But one thing to note right off the bat, a very familiar face within the SpoFi community. We have Breezy. He's going to be a staple on this show. We wanted three minds on the NFL. This is fun stuff to talk about. So he's going to be here every week with T. Philly. We'll start with you, Breezy. What's good, man? How you doing?
It's just fantastic to be here after working behind the scenes tirelessly, just grinding away. It's good to be on camera.
Finally going to get your shine.
Exactly. This is my 15 minutes of fame. I'm going to take every advantage of it.
15 minutes or more a week. So we're happy to have you. T. Philly, what's good, man? How you doing?
I'm great, man. I'm neck deep in spreadsheets. It's the time of the year when golf's going on, football's starting, diving in, off-season stuff. Yeah, too many spreadsheets to count, but that's okay. It's a good problem to have.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of things to look forward to, and we'll keep this intro pretty short because this is going to be a big video. We're going to go over the entire NFC today. We're going to talk about win totals. We're going to have T. Philly and Breezy give their predictions on what they think each team's win total is going to be. We're going to talk about some good bets, maybe some bets to stay away from. We'll also do one down the line for the AFC. And then we'll also make videos breaking down each division, talking about who the division winners are going to be, any bets we like within the divisions. We'll give Super Bowl picks, things like that. So let's just jump right into it. There were some obviously some changes. The NFL schedule just released last night. We have 17 games on the schedule for every team this year. So don't forget to take that into consideration when thinking about some of these win totals. And we'll also have several updates throughout the week on our Twitter. So at SpoFi HQ, there's going to be a new Twitter for this, at SpreadZone Pod. So follow us on there to stay up to date with everything we have going on. So with this new 17-game schedule, before we dive into the teams, I want to get your opinion. We'll start with you, Tyler. How did this sort of change the way you projected your totals? Did it change much? And what are your thoughts in general about 17 games?
Right. I mean, I'm a big fan of 17 games. Anytime you get more football, I'm not going to turn that down. As far as how it affected my process, very little. I mean, outside of just changing the formula that converts my season win totals to my weekly power ratings, not a whole lot changed. The one thing I will mention is that whenever you're taking this into consideration is the AFC is the conference that gets that extra home game this year. So just naturally, they're going to get a slight boost over the NFC when it comes to season win totals, just because they do have that extra home field game at their disposal this year.
No doubt. And Baker, I assume it's similar for you in terms of just changing the formula. So I'll ask you a little bit of a different question. How much better how much better are you at projecting win totals than Tyler?
Honestly, not that much better. I
not that much better. So a little better, he says.
Yeah, just a little bit better. No, I learned from the best, which is Tyler, and he introduced me to everything. So I'm taking from him, but we had some vast differences last year, especially for my Browns win totals, where he was under projecting and I was over projecting. So it's always good to have that kind of back and forth.
Oh, absolutely. And we'll get to that more on the AFC version of this.
Oh yeah, the AFC is going to be heavy.
We got the AFC represented well here. T. Philly, a Steelers fan, Breezy, a Browns fan, myself, a Titans fan here in Nashville. So the AFC well represented. Let's dive in though, because we are focusing on the NFC today, and we'll start with the Arizona Cardinals. We're going to give the win totals based on the Bet Online numbers from May 11th, because that being the case at the time, they were the only ones willing to put a line out there for the Packers with everything going on with Aaron Rodgers and the uncertainty there. So we'll start with the Cardinals. Their line 8.5, again, as of May 11th. They were 8-8 last season. Kyler Murray's looking to make the jump in his third year. DeAndre Hopkins. They add AJ Green. They add JJ Watt. So they made some big offseason acquisitions. Let's start with you, Baker. Let's get your number on the Arizona Cardinals and your thoughts for them.
Yeah, my projected win total is 9.5 games for them. They were good up until that Bills game, and then they just slid from there, in my opinion. The additions of J.J. Watt and A.J. Green, I think, are going to be great. Kyler was showing signs of an MVP season, but they were ranked number 26 in turnovers. That's got to change. The average defense was not good, so hopefully J.J. Watt can, help that out a little bit, or he's just going to get double teamed and he's going to make the biggest difference on the field. They have like an average strength of schedule as well too, and I think they're in the hardest division in football after the AFC North. So it's going to be tough for them. I do project them over the Bet Online win total of 8.5. And I did actually give them an extra point for draft and free agency. So we'll see how it goes. It's really going to depend if they can stay consistent. They need some help from the running back position. They did sign James Conner. We'll see if he's able to break out some yards, maybe get back to that early Pittsburgh season in them. So we'll see what happens, but I do have them currently over the win total.
Very good. Tyler, how about you for the Arizona Cardinals?
Well, James Conner shout out, former high school teammate of Zach Baker's. There's a video that we might have to expose to the SpoFi Nation at some point one day, but we'll keep that in our back pocket. For the Cardinals, like you said, 8.5. It is juiced to the over. I do agree with the number. I like the over. They underperformed how they actually played last year. Only 8 wins, but they were closer to 9.5 whenever you factor in like the Pythagorean theorem, which if you don't know it, look it up. Kind of gives you a true picture. With football, it's so tough because there's just, a small sample size. By using that Pythagorean theorem can give you a little bit more clear of a picture of how a team performed from year to year compared to, what they actually did on the field as far as results. But like Breezy said, I'm joining the over party. I project them at 9.25 wins. That's what my raw power rating says. I do have them at slightly below average as far as strength of schedule goes. So I like them to run it up. And I think they could compete with the Rams for a division title this year. I'm looking to, we'll touch base on them later, but I think a couple other teams in that division might take a little slide. But they did shore up the O-line this offseason for Kyler Murray. He's not going to be running for his life, even though he was, a great DFS quarterback for us last year. I know for sure, at least me. I know you too, Ladner. But I am also, one thing that I was looking at in the draft is I'm excited to see what Cliff Kingsbury does with Rondale Moore. He's going to be a weapon. If you didn't watch him play at Purdue, he kind of opted out the last year. But I'm excited to see what he does. And like you guys said, J.J. Watt, A.J. Green. A.J. Green doesn't really move the needle as far as season wins, but J.J. Watt can stay on the field. He's definitely going to boost up that defense.
No doubt. And we'll stay with you here, Tyler. Moving on to the Atlanta Falcons, 7.5 projected wins, 4-12 last season. Unsure what they're going to do with Julio Jones. Dan Quinn's out. They bring in Arthur Smith from the Titans. They have lots of questions about this team, but they did get a pretty good tight end in Kyle Pitts in the draft. So what are your thoughts on the Atlanta Falcons heading into this year?
So again, I do like the Atlanta Falcons this year. It's kind of same story as the Cardinals, underperformed last year based on their actual win total. 4 wins, closer to 8 when you factor in the Pythagorean theorem. That's just so happens to be right around where they're at this year. I project them for 8 wins. Definitely one of the most misleading win totals from last year. They're a much better team than a 4-12, which would have been 4-13 this year. They can put any kind of semblance of a defense together. And they don't trade away Julio Jones. You got him, Ridley, Pitts, Gage. They added Mike Davis. I think they're a team that they're not going to win the division with the Buccaneers, but they're a team that you're definitely not going to want to play in the playoffs with that offense. So I like them to go over just barely 8.5, 9 type wins.
For sure. Baker, I tend to agree with Tyler there, especially if they keep Julio Jones. What are your numbers? Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on the Atlanta Falcons?
Yeah, I'm in the same realm of things. I have them at 8, but I think that can fluctuate. I think they really improved once they got their new coach, or when they got them interim coach last year. I think after that Cowboys loss, when they lost in overtime, that was just heartbreaking. But they did add, I feel like, a generational talent in Pitts. They were ranked 27th in rush yards, 26th in red zone TD percentage. So if they can get those weapons and if they can get into the end zone, that win total it was going to be way more, especially last year when they were only at 4. So I'm with you guys here. Hopefully their defense improves. They're 29th in total pass yards allowed. 25th in red zone TD percentage allowed. So they're really going to have to pick it up. But I do think that they are primed for a comeback this year.
Nice. So time for another quick plug for everything we're doing over here at SpoFi HQ. You mentioned the red zone twice, both offensively and defensively for the Falcons, and just how red zone inefficiency and football will cost you some games. Spread zone inefficiency and betting will cost you some good lines. So stay up to date with the best numbers by following the Spread Zone at SpreadZone Pod on Twitter as well. Let's jump ahead. We're going to the Carolina Panthers here. 7.5 projected wins, juice to the under. 5-11 last season. It is now Sam Darnold time in Carolina. They sent 3 draft picks for Sam Darnold. Christian McCaffrey is going to be back and healthy, so having run CMC back to his old form. Hopefully he gets there because he's one of the most exciting players to watch in football. But again, they are in a tough division. We just talked about the Falcons, how we like them. Obviously, the Bucs and Saints as well. Tyler, what are your thoughts on the Carolina Panthers here?
Yeah, so I'm going to throw it back to you real quick. Do you have any idea how old Sam Darnold is?
I don't. I mean, I'll throw a guess out there, and I'll give you 28.
28. Okay. Baker, you? Any guesses?
He's probably 24, 25 maybe.
He is 23 years old.
See, I had no idea. I just thought he was one of those guys. Maybe he played in college for like 15 years. Shout out to like Perry Ellis, who played college basketball for 25 seasons. Yeah.
Exactly.
So
I mean, so many people are ready to write Sam Darnold completely off the map. I am completely opposite. I mean, their total is 7.5, juice to the under. This is one of the plays that I like to go over for sure. I am a believer in Sam Darnold. I mean, he, 3 years under his belt in the NFL. He has 3 years of experience, 23 years old. I like the fact that they didn't, draft the quarterback. They traded away Teddy Bridgewater. There's nobody breathing down his back. Like it's his job right now. They just picked up his 5th-year option as well. So he's here for the next 2 years. And, Matt Rule is going to put everything around him to try and succeed. He's finally going to get out of that Adam Gase offense that we've seen quarterbacks go to die in. I mean, we saw what Ryan Tannehill did whenever he goes to Tennessee, Ladner, getting out under his offense. He had one good year with Peyton Manning. Whenever it was Peyton Manning, he's going to get a job for life now. But I think there's something still left in the tank there. And I'm on the over at plus money. I mean, give me that all day. He does lose a major weapon in Curtis Samuel, but they did pick up David Moore, who, showed flashes in Seattle, last year. So I do like the over with Carolina. It's not a fun play at all. Nobody wants to take an over on Sam Darnold, but that's exactly why I think it's a good play.
Very good. Baker, your thoughts?
Yeah, I like the Panthers this year. My PR numbers don't have them at the total. I actually have them at 7, but I still like them. I don't know if I'm a believer in Darnold, but I know he was held back by Gase. I just know it because in college he was lights out accurate. So I'm hoping he can return to form and just ball out for the Panthers. I mean, they were in almost every game last year, just losing it at the wire. So if McCaffrey's healthy, I mean, he's a beast, absolute weapon. Maybe Darnold linking back up with Robbie Anderson for a little bit. Maybe he's got some familiarity there. I'm interested to see what happens. I think they have the 26th toughest schedule. If you rank 1 is the toughest, 26 or like 32 is the easiest, they're 26. So I think they have a good chance to make some noise. They're definitely in a tough division, but I would not mind throwing a bet on the over for the Panthers win total this year.
Okay, so interesting. You're a little conflicted. Your
I am.
gut,
The numbers,
you like the Panthers. The
say,
numbers are close enough, though.
Uh-oh, that's never good.
I know. This is probably where my heart gets into it a little bit too much, where I was watching some of the Panthers games and I was like, this team is not bad. And we'll see. I mean, I liked Teddy Bridgewater. I know he wasn't the full-time answer, but I thought he was a great, bridge quarterback. So if Darnold can do it, I like the team. They need to get off the field. They were 31st in third down percentage let up. So if they can improve on that side of the ball too, I think they could be a tough team to beat.
And they drafted an absolute dude in J.C. Horn at 8 overall.
Yeah, some Saints fans wanted him to come home because of his dad. So we'll move on to the Chicago Bears. Speaking of teams with a new quarterback at the helm, the Bears, the win total, BetOnline has them at 7.5. They were 8-8 last season. They bring in Andy Dalton in the offseason. They name him the starter, but then they also draft Justin Fields. Now, we're seeing that it's still Andy Dalton's job to lose kind of thing. But we've also seen Justin Fields as an absolute baller, and he's one of those guys who's a difference maker the second he steps on the field. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. The numbers, 7.5 right now. Baker, we're coming right back to you. What are your numbers for the Chicago Bears?
This is just tough right here because this is what I think might happen. You're going to have Andy Dalton starting 1 or 2 games, and then the fans are going to get so restless because he's going to perform so poorly. And you're going to know like Justin Fields, you have to see what he has. It's going to be a classic Brown situation where they draft a quarterback and then we'd be like, oh, nope, we're sticking with our guy. And then it would happen for like 3 games. Interesting note about the schedule is they play in Cleveland. So he'll be coming back to Ohio to play the 3rd game of the season. So will we see Justin Fields at that time? I don't know, but I'm assuming a lot of Browns fans are going to want those tickets to possibly see that happen. Their defense is stout. I think they're going to be able to hold teams to not scoring, which should give the offense, hopefully a little bit of a boost there. Players lost were replaced. I didn't have any extra points given for draft or free agency. So we'll really see what happens. I have them under 7.5. I have them right at 7. We'll see what happens, but it really depends on the quarterback play.
No doubt. And you've also seen it before where a team will run out the old veteran. He'll start the season 2-5, 2-6 before they bring in the young kid. So even if the young kid is a stud, you've already got 5-6 losses under your belt. Tyler, what are your thoughts and numbers for the Bears?
Right. Yeah, I'm going to echo similar sentiment. I do have them at projected 8.25 wins, but they do have 7th hardest strength of schedule. So I lean towards the over, but it's not something I'm willing to take. I think the total's a smidge low. Definitely one that I'd wait to see on, just to see, if they announce any kind of plans for Justin Fields versus Andy Dalton. I looked into it. The schedule, their bye week is until week 10, so I didn't know if it was a scenario where they might have an early bye week, say week 4 or 5, get Andy Dalton a couple starts and just plan to go to Justin Fields after the fact. If I knew it was Fields from day one, this is something that I would take over. But I'm in that scenario like you just mentioned, Ladner, that if Andy Dalton trots out there and he goes, they start out 2-4, that might just be a little too late for Justin Fields to make up for that. But my gut does say that they will start Dalton at least to begin the season. Because, are you really going to want to trot out Justin Fields week 1 at the Rams? He's built for tough matchups, but I think that's a tough situation to throw a rookie quarterback in.
No doubt. And it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. We're moving on to the Dallas Cowboys, a team with a pretty high projected win total, the highest we've talked about so far with 9.5. Juice to the under. They were 6-10 last season, and they are absolutely looking to get right and get healthy. We know Dak Prescott's back, one of the highest paid athletes in all of sports now. Zach Martin on the offensive line, Tyron Smith, offensive line. They're getting these guys back who simply weren't healthy last year or missed a large part of the season last year. They draft Micah Parsons at linebacker, so they got a stud on defense as well. They're improving because they're getting healthy, and they improved in the draft, in my opinion. Let's go to Baker again here for the Cowboys. Your numbers compared to the 9.5 listed.
Yeah, 9.5 is crazy when you think about it compared to how they were last year, but they were a completely different team when Dak was on the field. They were putting up major points, and they needed to do that because their defense was absolutely abysmal, like 28th ranked in the NFL. Just yikes. They were just getting passed all over. So they needed that like 50 points a game to really stand a chance, but they did make a lot of improvements. And with Dak coming back, I think they're going to be the team to beat. I think they win this division. CeeDee Lamb showed out. Micah Parsons is a great linebacker, so hopefully he can help shore up that defense a little bit. I added points for them for draft and free agency, but I still have them under 9.5. I have them at 8.25 right now. That's what the numbers, and I'm going to stick with that. So I'm going to stay on the under, but they're in the NFC Beast, so we don't even know what's going to happen in that division this year. So 8 could possibly win it again. Or I don't know what the win total was for Washington last year, but I think 8 could possibly win it. So I'm on the under.
We'll get there, but it was 7. They won the division
Yeah.
with a whopping 7
Jeez.
piece. So,
Wow.
Tyler, your thoughts on the Cowboys?
Yeah, I mean, you got to throw out the results last year at the end with Dak's injury. It's going to be a similar situation for me compared to the Falcons. Yeah, again, if they can put any kind of defense together, obviously they drafted Parsons. They really needed secondary help. Just so happened that Horn and Patrick Surtain got drafted 8-9 right ahead of them whenever they were pretty much slated by every mock drafter in the world to take one of those cornerbacks at 10. Ended up trading back. So again, got Parsons, but really need to shore up that secondary because like Baker said, I mean, they just got torched through the air last year. I think this line is right where it needs to be. I mean, it's 9.5 juice to the under. I put them at right around 9 wins with bottom half strength of schedule. So I think 9.5 juice to the under is right where it needs to be. Not a line that I would touch. I am excited to see whether or not Zeke gets back to his old ways. I mean, that guy has a lot of miles on his legs, so I don't know if that's going to be the case. And I mean, to be honest, I mean, Tony Pollard looked better last year at every single point, even though they had the offensive line issues. I mean, he provided a spark last year, and that's not something that Zeke provided.
Okay, so again, a stay away for you just because you think the line's where it should be, and your numbers pretty much agree with that as well. Let's move on to the Detroit Lions, who are getting no love. Their projected win total is 5, juice to the under. They were 5-11 last season, and the offseason has been well documented. Matthew Stafford for Jared Goff. Stafford's been taking a beating there for years. He's one of the toughest dudes in the NFL. He gets hurt every game and kind of brushes it off. Finally, he goes to the front office like Panic at the Disco and says, if you love me, let me go. So they did. They swap him for Jared Goff, who they obviously don't care about his health, and some draft picks. But however, they did go and draft Penei Sewell, which is obviously an instant boost and protection for the quarterback. So 5-11 last year, the number's 5. Tyler, staying with you. What are your thoughts on the Lions?
I think it could get ugly in Detroit this year, like really, really ugly. I mean, I don't mind what they're building. I don't hate the Penei Sewell pick, but these are picks that you're not really going to reap the rewards this year. I mean, he's going to be a stud tackle, but I mean, Jared Goff is not the future at the quarterback position. They didn't take a quarterback in this draft, had an opportunity to do so, especially in Justin Fields. That's the direction I would have went. But obviously maybe they have their eyes set on somebody next year. So they'll have to get the quarterback of the future next year because it's not going to be Jared Goff. I mean, we're going to see that this year. It's a big downgrade from Stafford to Goff. So I'm thinking that they are going to be picking number 1 or number 2 next year. Because again, it's going to get ugly. I have them at around 4.5 wins with close to top 5 strength of schedule, hardest schedules in football this year. So yeah, it's going to be ugly.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I have a feeling, Baker, you might feel some of the same. What are your thoughts on the Lions?
The poor Lions, man. Like, can we give them an easier schedule? Like, what's going on here? They're not going to be good this year. Goff would need major help. They were 30th in rush yards. They're 30th in rush attempts. It's Goff. I don't even know if he's going to be healthy enough to play in Detroit. I mean, look at the beating that Matthew Stafford took. So.
No Kenny Galladay anymore.
No Kenny Galladay. Yeah, I just don't see it. I don't know where they land, to be honest. I think they could go from like 2 to 6 wins maybe, but the numbers are actually over. I'm at 5.5 instead of their win total of 5. It'll be super interesting to see if that plays out, but I'm probably not touching this bet at all.
And one other thing that I want to add on this is whenever you're looking at season win totals like this, I mean, yeah, you can look at how good a team is, project how good they might be towards the end of the year, but something you really got to factor in is motivation. I mean, we saw last year at the end of the year is Jacksonville. I mean, they had Trevor Lawrence in the back. Like, why they had zero motivation to play quality football and win games. And I mean, you can say what you want. Like, obviously the players on the field are putting their best foot forward. Like, I don't think they are the ones tanking. Like, Gardner Minshew's not out there trying to lose so that Trevor Lawrence comes in, takes his job. But there is something to say where the organization just doesn't put them in the best position to succeed, doesn't put the right people on the field. So that's something you have to consider is, I mean, what motivation do the Lions have to be good this year? What is the sense of winning 6-7 games this year? You're drafted in the middle of the pack. You still don't have a quarterback. Like, that is something to consider because coming down the stretch this year, I mean, they're going to have zero motivation to win football games.
Definitely. And that's something that's hard to put a number on too, which
Right.
is probably adds to what Baker was saying, that this is just a complete stay away as well. To one of the more interesting teams this offseason, the Green Bay Packers, 13-3 last season. Their win total on Bet Online right now is 9. It's hard to say where that number's coming from, what kind of information is being used. We don't know what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers. He wants out. Will he stay? I personally think he ends up staying and they find a way to work this out. And one of the main reasons, I mean, one of the most unstoppable connections in all of football, not just last year, but in it probably history is from him and Devontae Adams. It's just incredible what they were able to accomplish last year. They didn't have a ton of change this offseason to their team. So if Rodgers comes back and they were 13-3 last year without a lot of change, what makes you think they're going to win less than 9 games now? So Tyler, right back to you for this total and your thoughts on the Green Bay Packers.
Right. So, I mean, we're getting 9 because, I mean, the total actually opened up 11 on Bet Online, and then it dropped to 9. So basically, you're getting a free roll on the Packers, whether or not you think Aaron Rodgers is going to stay or leave. If you think he's going to stay, you're getting a 9 at a discount. I mean, their total will shoot up right back up to 11 should the news come through that he stays. And same thing the opposite way. If it does get announced that he's leaving, their total is probably going to drop to 7 or 8. So you're getting a free roll at 9. Either way, you like it, because everything that I hear about Jordan Love is that it's not good. Like it would not be a good thing if he ends up being the quarterback for the Packers. And I mean, it was kind of smoke and mirrors last year. I mean, 13 wins, but they were closer to 11.5 when you factor in the Pythagorean, actually closer to 11. So even with Rodgers' historic season, I don't think he's going to replicate that. But I mean, I can only judge the team that's on the field. So at 9 wins, 10.5, I project them at. I would lean towards the over, especially if Rodgers stays. Like I said, you have to evaluate the team that is there now. So I'm making power ratings for them. I put them at 10.5 wins, middle of the road when it comes to strength of schedule. So I would like the over, but I am in the camp that Aaron Rodgers is gone. I mean, I think he's going to go to Denver. And I mean, if you think about, you mentioned it, not a whole lot of change. I mean, there was actually 0 change. They had 0 offseason signings. So, I mean, that is not exactly what you want if you're Aaron Rodgers. So, and again, I mean, he's a guy that's exiled his own family. So I don't think he has any loyalty to Green Bay.
That's tough. Baker, truer words have never been spoken about Rodgers and his allegiance to anyone. So what are your thoughts on the Packers here with a total of 9?
Yeah, I mean, you got to take it at the discount in plan that he'll be back. I think he'll be back. I kind of side with you, Ladder, on that one, but I could totally see it. It gets brought up a lot that he doesn't talk to his family and he's real flaky. So I guess that could definitely factor into this. I know he probably wants to go to warmer weather and everything like that too, but number 1 team in points scored. They ran into a tough Tampa Bay team. If MVP Aaron Rodgers can come back, I do have them at 11 wins. So I would have been right on the number if they kept it. But given the situation, it's at that 9. So I'll probably take it. Yeah, they didn't do anything in the free agency. The draft was okay for them, but I actually docked them 0.5 for that. The cap space issue out there was crazy because of all the signings they had last year. So I have them at 11. I'll probably take this at the discount and let it ride.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that, especially if you think Rodgers is staying. We are moving to the other side of the Goff-Stafford flip-flop to talk about the Rams here. 10 projected wins, juiced to the over. They were 10-6 last season with Jared Goff. And Tyler, you mentioned it. This is a serious upgrade, no matter how you look at it. Stafford's a gunslinger, and when you add him with 2 very, very good wide receivers in Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, they also added Deshaun Jackson, who's always been sort of a over-the-top threat with a guy who can certainly get it to him. I think this is setting up to be quite an explosive offense if they can keep Stafford healthy. So, Baker, we're coming right back to you here. What are your thoughts on the Rams and their total of 10?
I'm very happy with the Rams because they gave us John Johnson and Troy Hill. So it's definitely good to beef up our defense and take it from LA's. But LA had a great defense last year. I think they struggled to find their identity. I don't think they believed in Goff anymore, so it was a little bit tougher on that side. But that defense is going to be stout. Again, they're going to be playing in the best division. I'm really happy for Stafford. I think he gets a real chance to play on a better team and hopefully make some noise. They got great receivers out there. Kim Akers showed he could be a running back one. I have them at 9.5, so I'm actually under the total because that's where the numbers came out. But I wouldn't be surprised if they go over.
Gotcha. Tyler, before we go to you, I want to make an important note here. So these numbers that we're getting from you, Tyler, and from you, Baker, are pretty close to what we're seeing on Bet Online. But this is the importance of having multiple outs and shopping multiple lines, because these totals won't necessarily be the same across all books. So while, Baker might have them at 9.5 wins, right? There might be another book out there laying them with total of 11 or whatever the case may be. So it's very important. Do your shopping, find the best lines for you if you're making your own numbers that make the most sense and give you the best advantage. Tyler, I'll let you say a word on that if you'd like, or we can dive right into your thoughts on the Rams with 10.
No, I mean, that's a great point. I mean, there's so many differences. I know, for instance, like the Lions, you can get plus money on the under and then plus money on the over 5 if you shop around enough at different books. If you wanted to lock up your money on a 2-3% ROI, you can do it. But yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing, especially, with any of this, not just season win totals, any kind of, if you can get 3, 4, 5 books, I mean, you are going to increase your winning percentage tenfold. Just as breezy. It makes a huge difference when you get multiple outs. But as far as the Rams, I mean, 10 juice to the over, that's a big number when it comes to season win totals. Anytime you're creeping up on double digits, that's a good amount to project, even with a 17th game this year. I do like the over, though. I mean, to me, they have the second easiest schedule, so I put them right at 10.5 wins as far as my power ratings. Throw in that bonus of having the second easiest strength of schedule. I do like them over the 10, even though it's juiced up, probably closer to like 10.5 once you factor in like the implied probabilities of that. But yeah, you mentioned Stafford being an upgrade over Goff. I mean, he opens up a whole new world for Sean McVay and what that offense can become. I mean, we saw Jared Goff take this team to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, and he kind of had to dumb down the playbook, it seemed like, for Goff and his capability. So now Stafford, being the gunslinger he is, opens up a whole new world. They're basically running back with the same team, traded away all their draft picks. I think they only made 3 draft picks this year. So they're not afraid to mortgage the future. That's been the whole case of the Sean McVay regime. But I think a team that could go all in and win a Super Bowl this year, I think the Rams can compete now with Stafford.
Yeah, they're definitely showing that all-in mentality, keeping those same offensive weapons. Baker brings up a great point about Cam Akers showing out at the end of last season. So if he can stay true to that form, they're going to have a really good team, really good offense. Let's move to the Minnesota Vikings here. The projected total, 8.5, juice to the over. They were 7-9 last season, but they beefed up their offensive line. They have the 3-headed monster still of Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, and Justin Jefferson. So 7-9 last year, the books have them at 8.5. My question for you, Baker, with Kirk Cousins at the helm, you like that?
I like that. I like that number. I have them at 8.75. I think that they have Justin Jefferson just beasting it out there. They rank 6th in red zone percentage at 71.2%. So that's good. They can get into the end zone. They ended the season pretty well, in my opinion. The only thing is that the defense was bad. 492 points given up, bottom of the league in pass yards and rush yards given up, 30 out of 32 in defense. So that's going to be their fall point. But if they can if they can hit it on offense, I think they're going to be a good team this year. So I have it slightly above 8.5.
All right. Tyler, what's your numbers on the Vikings?
Yeah, we're finally going to disagree on something. I don't get this number at all. I have no idea what I'm missing here, but I cannot see how they're an 8.5 win team juiced to the over. I don't get it. I mean, it took everything in me to get them to 7.75 wins. Landed at 8, but they have a top 10 strength of schedule. I don't understand it. The only thing that I could think of is that basically the sum of the parts around them, kind of got worse, and it's boosting them up. It's lifting their boats with, the implied odds that Rodgers is out of Green Bay, out of that division. The Lions are going to be bad, and the Bears, kind of not sure where they're going at quarterback and how they're going to look to start the year. That's the only thing that I can think of that is lifting them up. But I'm not a fan of an NFL team having to rely on others to be bad for you to be good. For me, this is a stone cold under here. I just don't see how they can come close to double-digit wins this year. I don't know what I'm missing, but I don't see it.
Well, I guess we should have looked at their schedule to see if there are any primetime games, because we know the story of Kirk Cousins on primetime. Maybe that, who knows how that's factored in.
So little nugget on that is, so it's not actually the fact that it plays in primetime games. So Kirk Cousins is the most strictly regimented person that you may have ever heard of in your entire life. Like, dude plans out like to the minute his day. So anytime you go take him off of his routine like that and throw in a primetime game, that I think is what actually causes his underperformance in those games, and not just the bright lights, but he's just a regimented dude and can't get over that hump.
Can't mess with the schedule.
I would say it sounds like he has some issues, but his issues have led to him getting paid a whole lot more than I do. So good for him, regardless of his daily schedule. So let's move on. That was the first big disagreement between you two on someone likes the over, someone likes the under. So we'll have to be sure to revisit this towards the end of the season and see who's going to take the SpoFi crown here. But we're moving on to the New Orleans Saints. Their number, 9.5 wins. They were 12-4 last season. Drew Brees obviously retired. They're no more. We don't know who actually is going to be QB1. Will it be a combination of Taysom Hill, Jameis Winston? They're both going to get a shot at being sort of the QB1. One of them got paid $140 million this offseason in Taysom Hill. So he's sort of your Swiss Army knife. Jameis Winston did come in when Drew was unable to play last year and actually had some pretty good numbers and looked like he knew what, like he was making some improvements out there. So who knows what's going to happen. But the number 9.5, Tyler, what are your thoughts on the Saints?
Yeah, 9.5. This is my biggest fall off from a team from last year to this year. I have them right around 8.5 wins, and that does not factor in the fact that I have them as the hardest schedule when it comes to strength of schedule. So I am looking under all the way here. I know I'm going to catch flack on this. Baker, our old coworker Schramm is a big New Orleans Saints fan, and me and him would go back and forth all day because I'd always say they're overrated, like all their stats. Again, it was wins are the only thing that matter, and I'm looking at the underlying stats saying they're due for regression, and I think that regression comes this year. There's no real clear path plan at quarterback. I mean, I think they're going to end up trotting Jameis Winston out. But I think all those years of kicking the salary can down the road is finally catching up with them. This under all the way for me, especially in a division where you have the Bucs and two improved teams that I've talked about is the Falcons and the Panthers. It's going to make for a really tough schedule for them. There was rumors day of the draft that they were going to plan up to trade up into the top 10. You mentioned if they were to grab a cornerback, I would have loved to see them make a splash for Trey Lance. I mean, he would have been pretty expensive. Obviously, we saw what the 49ers had to pay for, to go to get him. But I think in that offense, he is a super beefed up version of what Taysom Hill tries to be.
I would like to issue a public apology to all of my friends back home in New Orleans who may feel some type of way about Tyler's take and going on the under here. I need you to know that I'm 500 units deep into the over for the Saints. So
numbers you like to hear.
Not good for bankroll management.
Not good for bankroll. I'm just rolling with the hometown team. So Baker, what are your thoughts on the Saints?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Tyler here. Peyton loves Taysom Hill, and I think they should play Jameis, but I have him at 8.5 as well. I mean, Kamara and Thomas are great, but they lost. They had a lot of casualties this year. Jenkins, Sanders, Cook, Hendrickson, Rankins, K1 Alexander, just cap casualties out here. So I have them under, and I couldn't agree more. That would be crazy if they would have got Trey Lance. That would have been a perfect fit for them, I feel like. So maybe we should just become draft experts and specifically for the Saints here.
I would like to go on the record that I did beat Mel Kiper, his first round draft mock. I had more correct picks, so I'm gonna just leave it at that. That's fine.
Everyone,
We won't say the number.
I'm not saying. Yeah, no, the number doesn't matter, Leonard. It's just the results.
That's it. That's exactly it. So let's move on here. The New York Football Giants with a total of 7.5 right now. They were 6-10 last year. Saquon Barkley was hurt, and they really missed him. Their offense struggled greatly, both in the run game and pass game without Saquon. But they get Kenny Golladay now, and Danny Dimes, looking to improve, has another weapon this year. Will the offense be explosive with Saquon Barkley back now that they have a little bit of a bigger threat at receiver as well? Tyler, your thoughts on the Giants and their number of 7.5?
Yeah, I think it's a really sharp number. I put them right around just a smidge over 7.5 wins, but factoring their strength of schedule, top 10 hardest, I like them right at 7.5. I don't see this number really moving one way or the other. I love, obviously, the Golladay signing, finally get him out of Detroit. But they didn't really do much outside of him. I would lean slightly to the over if I absolutely had to take a pick, but I think this number is right where it needs to be. You do mention that they get Sack Barkley back. It's kind of, up in the air whether or not that could be a negative EV thing for them, since they'll pretty much just try to force feed him, and passing is usually the better route to go. I know there's a lot of debate on that back and forth whether that's the case, but I think this number is right where it needs to be and not something that I'm ready to touch, especially in that division.
Yeah, they did have a tendency of passing on 3rd and 8 after 2 straight runs up the middle. So, Baker, thoughts on this Giants offense and more importantly, their total of 7.5 wins?
Yeah, I have them under 7.5. I have them right at 7. 31st in offense yards, 29th in pass yards, 31 in pass TDs. I know that they added Kenny Golladay. Is he worth the price? Probably, because Jones had the highest rate of accurate throws among starting quarterbacks, passing 20 yards downfield in 2020. So if this is a good target for him and he can really spread the ball out and then maybe take some pressure off Saquon Barkley having to run it a lot this year, I think they could be good. They added Kadarius Toney in the draft. Their defense was kind of their bright spot last year, ranked 8th overall. So I added one for draft and free agency as well, but I still have them at 7.
Okay, consensus under there. Staying in that division, talking about the Philadelphia Eagles, 6.5 win total, juice to the over. They were 4-11 last season. It was well documented. They were sort of the drama team, the hot topic of every week after their games with what was going on between Carson Wentz, Doug Peterson. They're both out now. Jalen Hurts, who showed some really, really serious talent at times last season and the ability to just go out and get the job done, he's going to be taking over. They draft Devontae Smith. Is there going to be a connection there? Those two are both really high-level playmaking guys. So will they be fun to watch? I think so. But will they win? Baker, your thoughts on this number of 6.5?
I have them right at 6.5. And I don't know if that's good or if they could even be lower. I don't know. Is Jalen Hurts the answer? We're going to have to find out. Miles Sanders is a good running back. They were 9th overall in rush yards. They also have Boston Scott and Kerryon Johnson to help kind of take off the load from him. They have a pretty easy schedule. Their defense, though, was pretty bad, too. So it's going to be tough for them to get past that. I have them right at 6.5, and I'm pretty firm on that. It just feels like a good number for me. And it's funny because the Eagles took the largest dead cap space charge in NFL history with that trade of Carson Wentz. It's just funny. It was just an interception machine, so you can't really look at their offensive production numbers. So we'll see what happens, but I'm going to stick right at the 6.5.
Yeah, the only thing I can explain the whole Carson Wentz situation is when a baseball player gets the yips and once knew how to pitch or throw or whatever, but simply can't do it anymore. Can't throw a pick off the first base or whatever. His mechanics, he lost all of them. He started sailing balls and lost his accuracy. So like you were saying, you kind of have to throw that out the window because you don't know what it's going to be like if you have a quarterback that doesn't turn it over at such a high rate. Tyler, your thoughts on this Eagles offense?
Yep, I'd lean a little bit to the over at 6.5. I put them right around 7. They have a pretty easy schedule. Like you mentioned, I think Devontae Smith, that's going to be electric to watch him. Hopefully, Jalen Reagor take a step forward if he's not injured like he was last year. We'll give thoughts on Carson Wentz a little bit deeper whenever we do the AFC win totals, but I'm pretty happy that they went with Hurts. Didn't draft a quarterback this year, kind of turning over the keys to the offense to him, which I think is the right move. Because, you got to see what you have in the guy if, he's your long-term answer or not. 7 wins, though, is right where I have him. And that's, again, the implied with the 6.5 juice. I think that's, the implied number. So I wouldn't touch it. But I think they will struggle out of the gate, though. They have a pretty difficult schedule to start the season, but I think that will be good for the Eagles organization as a whole, because you're going to see how Hurts and Sirianni respond to some adversity. And that schedule lightens up a little bit down the stretch. So that will be an opportunity where we talked about 7 wins, won this division last year. 8 could do it again this year. And I think they'll be right in the thick of it. And I'm excited to see, if Jalen Hurts can shoulder the load for the Eagles.
No doubt. Moving on to the San Francisco 49ers with with a win total of 10. They were 6-10 last season, but again, another team that was really hit hard by injuries. We talked about Trey Lance a little bit earlier, and you guys both seem pretty high on Trey Lance. They draft him, but they also still have Jimmy Garoppolo. Will Jimmy G stay healthy? It seems like the front office isn't counting on it. But if he does, and if this team gets back to healthy, George Kittle, top tight end in the league in terms of receiving, he was banged up all last year. And you had so many injuries with this team. If they can stay healthy, and 10 is a pretty high win total. So, Baker, what are your thoughts on the 49ers here?
I like the 49ers. The win total must have changed because I had them at 9.5 at BOL, so it must have went up. But I have them right at 10. So I think the number is right aligned. Maybe just last year was a fluke, but I like Jimmy G. If he wasn't hurt, I think they're a good team. I like Kittle a lot. If they can stay consistent and not hit the injury bug, I think they could be a good team. I think they could win the division. I'll pick them to win the division, and it's going to be super tough, and the Rams are going to be extremely tough in that division as well. But a less tough schedule than the Seahawks, and I'm gonna go with them 10.
All right, Tyler, your thoughts there. Are you agreeing with Baker?
Well, I like the reasoning. Go out on a limb, pick the division winner already. I like it. I think this number is going to be right where it should be. I have them slightly under, right around 9.5 wins. The whole Jimmy G thing, Trey Lance, obviously Trey Lance is that guy. You don't trade that kind of capital to go up and not, eventually give him the keys. But I think it's a similar situation to Justin Fields. There's a lot of talk on whether Trey Lance is NFL ready or not. We'll see. I think he is. But it's a matter of when, not if Trey Lance gets in. And once he's in, he's not going to hand it back to Jimmy G, barring injury. So I don't know. 10, again, with season win totals, you got to really look at, you're not looking at the ceiling of a team, because if Trey Lance comes in, they could win 12, 13, 14 games. They could do that with Jimmy G as well, but you got to really look at the median outcome of what's the most likely outcome to happen. And again, once you reach that double digit mark, I think that's tough, especially for a team. Obviously they're going to improve a lot just based on the sheer fact that they're not as injured as they were last year. But that speaks to the depth that they didn't have. But I think, again, if it was Trey Lance from the start, I'd like the over, but it might be a little too late once he finally does, because I think he will eventually take over the starting job this year.
No doubt. Let's stay in that division. Let's talk about the Seahawks. 9.5 projected wins, juice to the over. 12-4 last season. And we hear the same story that we've heard for the Seahawks for a long time. Russell Wilson's unhappy. Russell Wilson trade, this, that, and the other. Nothing ever happens. It always ends up being some whispers. The reason that we hear this so much, though, is he's another one of those guys that just takes an absolute beating. He gets sacked so much. He's constantly, having to escape the pocket. He's getting hit, and he's really tough. He's another one of those guys that'll play through injuries. They drafted a lineman in the 6th round. They traded for Gabe Jackson. So they made a little bit of progress on the offensive line. Is that enough? And what are your thoughts on this win total at 9.5, Tyler?
gonna go ahead and correct myself. I said the Rams drafted 3 players last year. It was the Seahawks in this past draft. The Rams just traded all their first round draft picks away, so none of the good guys they're drafting. At 9.5, I'm not gonna touch this with a 10-foot pole. I put them slightly over that number with an easy strength of schedule. That's the only pause. That's the only thing that's really given me pause to not take the over. But there was a tale of two Russes last year. I mean, we saw the first part. He was an easy MVP candidate. During the middle of the stretch, he just was completely dust. And then he brought it back together towards the end of last year. But, like the Packers, this offseason, they did nothing to improve the team. You're going to rely on Russell Wilson to channel that magic again from his performance at the beginning and end of last year. I don't see it. They're kind of banking on that happening to, win this year in the division. But yeah, that schedule is the only thing that's, giving me pause about where this number's at. So I think it's good where it's at, but if I had to take, I'd actually take a little bit to the over, because that 9.5 is way juiced up. It's actually closer to 10.5 implied probability. So I am not going to touch that at all.
Gotcha. Baker, your thoughts on the Seahawks with a 9.5 total with juice to the over?
I am right at 9.5, and I'm probably not going to touch it at all. They lost Shaq Griffin and the second worst pass yards on defense. They are quiet in free agency. And yeah, is Russ still cooking is the question. What Russ are we going to get? And they were tied for 4th in sacks allowed, and they did make some adjustments, but I don't know if it's going to be enough. I took points away for the free agency of the draft. Their red zone proficiency was there, 73.2, but they were below average in third down percentage. They have a good receiving core if DK Metcalf's not too worried about the Olympics. Signed Gerald Everett to kind of replace the old and retired Greg Olsen. I like Greg Olsen, though, so that was not a dig at him at all. He can enjoy his retirement. But yeah, I have him at 9.5. I think it's a good number, and it's something I'm not going to bet.
Baker hates Greg Olsen. We found that out today.
Yeah.
You heard it on the spread zone. You also heard that if the Seahawks want to top this 9.5 win total, we're going to need to see Mr. Unlimited in his full form. So we got 2 teams left to wrap this up. The next one being the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 11.5 projected wins, juice to the over. They were 11-5 last season. They did not win the division with a record of 11-5. And there was all this midseason talk when they lost a couple of games or they didn't play well a couple games in a row. Was the team not meshing well? You can't take all these superstars and put them together and just expect them to win games. And Tom Brady was washed and, all the stuff that you hear, and you blink and you open your eyes and they win the Super Bowl. They're going to be the division favorites this year. Tyler, what are your thoughts on the Tampa Bay Bucs with an 11.5 win projection?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of talk about, Father Time catching up to Tom Brady. But I think Tom Brady is actually Father Time, because it just doesn't seem to happen.
I mean, we've heard it for 7 years now, Father Time and Tom Brady. So
he is Father Time. As far as, 11.5, I don't know. I'm not going to touch anything close to that high. Even 12 wins is a lot for any team, especially for Tom Brady led team that is the defending champions that are returning every single starter pretty much. So they probably will win 12 games, but I don't think it's really worth paying to see it. And I've already made mad the entire city of New Orleans, so I'll do it again with the city of Pittsburgh now. But growing up a Steelers fan, I am a huge Tom Brady fan. I will say that. So, might as well get everybody mad at me while I'm at
it. You're just stirring the pot all show long. Baker, what are your thoughts on the Bucs 11.5 win projection?
I really liked what Tyler said there about bringing the whole team back. Is this the first time that's ever happened? I just swear I haven't seen it. Maybe it's just because I'm mostly following the Browns, and the turnover there is just absolutely wild. But I like them. I like the over in this. I would take it. I think they can get to 12 in the 17-game season. So they have an easy schedule too, and they were 3rd in total points, 2nd in passing, 68.9 red zone TD percentage. They have a great receiving room. Playoff Lenny. Let's see if he can make some noise during the regular season. Maybe get a regular season Lenny going. Yeah, I like it. I think 12 is fine, and I would make the bet.
Interesting take there. I wonder if regular season Lenny would bring the same juice. There's definitely a difference in regular season Tom and postseason Tom. So, but there's just no debate, and postseason Tom is the GOAT. So let's move on. Speaking of division winners, our last team to wrap up the NFC, the Washington football team, winning their division last year with a record of 7-9. They have an 8.5 projected win total. Chase Young obviously affects every single game he's on the field. He is an absolute beast. They add Fitzmagic in the offseason. They played a playoff game with a third-string quarterback. Dwayne Haskins wasn't it. Alex Smith, they said that was a fun last ride, but we're going to move on. They bring in Fitzmagic, who, if Tom Brady's father time, Fitzpatrick is grandfather time, because he's been around, he's been on every team, and somehow he continues to win football games. They have some very talented skill position players on this team. I really like Terry McLaurin and what he brings to an offense. So 8.5 seems a little bit high, but they do have some talent. Baker, your thoughts on the Washington football team?
I have them at 8. It's going to be so up in the air for Fitzmagic. I mean, I feel like he's one of those guys that can throw, for 500 yards in a game and then win that game, or he can throw 5 interceptions and 100 yards. He's just all over the place. But it is the NFC beast, like I mentioned earlier in the video. So you don't know what's going to happen, but they're going to need a lot more rush production. They rank 20th in total touchdowns. But we'll see. Maybe linking up with Curtis Samuel, Terry McLaurin, that Ohio State connection. See if they can make some noise. I have them at 8, but I probably would stay away from the bet.
Gotcha. Tyler, your thoughts on the football team, 8.5 wins.
Are you even going to watch any football team games this year, Baker, with the Ohio State connection, being a Penn State guy?
Hey, my family lives in Columbus, so there's a little bit of connection out there. So we'll see.
Fair enough.
It's just Cleveland, the whole Ohio State thing. I don't know. Everybody from Cleveland loves Ohio State, so I just hear it a lot on Twitter. I'm a weird guy.
Weird, dude.
A lot of things going on.
Penguins fan, Browns fan, Ohio State fan, Penn State guy. It's a lot going on there.
Wow.
But as far as the 8.5 wins, I put them right at 8.5 wins. Pretty tough strength of schedule this year. They're going to be playing a first place schedule this year. Even though they were a 7-1 team this year, Fitzmagic adds some stability to the quarterback position. I mean, and some upside really, because they just got flat out bad quarterback play last year. I kind of would have loved to see Taylor Heineke get his chance at a starting job. I mean, he had 300 yards against the Bucs, and people forget that was a 5-point game with 4 minutes left after he scored a touchdown. So it
was the closest playoff game the Bucs played.
Exactly.
Crazy.
I mean, he got himself paid because of it, but would have liked to see himself. And who knows? I mean, maybe he goes down. This seems to be a trend where Fitzmagic just goes and grooms the next guy. So maybe that's Heineke. Who knows? Like I said, though, he got himself a contract. The defense was outstanding last year. You mentioned Chase Young, obviously goes without saying. Should come back down a little bit to life this year, but like you mentioned, Baker, that Curtis Samuel addition, him and Terry McLaurin, that's so many weapons. And a Logan Thomas, Antonio Gibson out of the backfield. That they're going to be an offense that plays pretty well, and if that defense, it will take a step backwards a little. It has to, but if they can piece it together, I would lean towards the over.
All right. Both of you guys seem to like this number that they're getting. I think 8.5 is a little high, even with all the talent. We'll see how it plays out. That wraps up the teams in the NFC. Final thoughts I do want to get from each of you. Tyler, we'll start with you. What is your favorite win totals bet that we went over here? A number that in your mind is just wrong or pretty far off. Which one are you going with?
All right, for fear of making everybody really, really mad, unsubscribing to the channel, I will not say the Saints, because definitely wasn't going to say the Saints. No, not me. I'll say the Vikings. Again, I talked about it. I don't get that line. I think it's kind of inflated just because everything around them that's going on. If Rodgers does stay, that just hurts their chances. If the Bears wise up and turn to Fields sooner rather than later. I think that under is a lock, and I don't say that very often.
So you're going with the Vikings under 8.5 wins.
Correct. Yep.
You love to hear it. Baker,
Technically, if you can find a 9, though, that'd be even better because it is 8.5 right now, juice to the over. So
do your shopping out there.
Yep.
Baker, what is your favorite bet here? Your favorite totals, a number that you think might be just wrong in according to your numbers?
Life is too short to bet the under. Famous Barstool Big Cat quote right there. I want to say Green Bay just because it seems so easy right now if Rodgers returns to just kind of lock that in. But I'd be comfortable putting Tampa Bay over that 11.5. It's really tough, especially when you get into those double-digit numbers. But I'm all for it. They're returning the same team. They're going to have that consistency, and it's Father Time himself. So I'd be comfortable with that one.
It is tough to get over that 11-win hump. However, I do see what you're saying, and I like the point you bring up about, mid-season last year, this team was struggling to sort of mesh together. They put it all together finally in the playoffs, and now it's the same dudes, the same group of studs that you're running out there. So I see what you're saying there. So we are going to be doing a show breaking down each division, talking about each team. We'll go over some prop bets. We'll go over some division winners. We'll pick Super Bowl winners after we do the AFC as well, and go through stuff like that. Final thoughts from you guys before we wrap up here, Tyler?
No, I'm just really excited to dive into the NFL. I mean, obviously we got a lot going on at SpoFi, but NFL's king. So this is where we need to be, and I'm excited to do it. This is probably the sport, even more so than golf, that I put my time in the most. So excited to kind of peel it back and dive in.
Absolutely. Baker, you're on a new camera here. You're looking crisp, my man. And
crisp.
You're going to have to get used to it because you're going to be a staple here this season, talking about some DFS, talking about some in-season betting lines, some movement that we're looking for and stuff like that. So any final thoughts for you this season, either on the NFC or the NFL as a whole?
Yeah, well, first, it's just great to be here. The biggest SpoFi fan. I just love this company more than anything in the world. So it's just so good to be here. No, I echo what Tyler was saying. Like, this is everything. NFL is everything. Like, I've been spending pretty much every day from like 5 to 10 just deep diving into numbers. I probably can't even see like green, red, and yellow anymore. They're just like bleeding into my brain right now. So I'm super excited. I think we're going to have great shows all throughout the season. I think we're going to dive into a lot of numbers, and hopefully we can provide some value to some people out there.
Absolutely. That is important. You use the word company. I think we're a little far from that, but one of the missions and values, one of the values of this company is perhaps some work-life balance. So take your head out of the spreadsheet, get some color back in your life. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Catch us on socials, subscribe to YouTube, all that good stuff, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.